In this session, I want us to think about accessibility, what it is and how to do it well. Accessibility is about making your content available to the widest possible audience and avoiding inadvertently making choices that shut people out. To keep your website content accessible, you need to think about a range of issues. The first one is visual impairment. As our population ages, more and more people find small text hard to read. So having good sized paragraph text and good contrast between text and the background is essential. If you have a severe visual impairment, you also have a mobility problem. So information that comes to you rather than you going to it is doubly important. Imagine the despair you would feel if you believed you'd found the website that contained the information you needed, but because of poor accessibility, the content proved to be unavailable to you. Assistive devices are able to convert text into other media to convey meaning to people who may have difficulty seeing what's on screen. For example, text can be read out by voicing browsers or converted into Braille. If, however, you have text that is in fact a picture, like for example, you've got a JPEG with words on it, those words are completely invisible to a person using a voicing browser or a Braille browser. So text on a website should always be available as HTML text. The next thing you want to consider is hearing impairment. Accessibility is not only an issue for people suffering from visual impairment. For example, if critical information on your website is provided as a podcast or the voiceover to a video, people with hearing impairments will be unable to access that information. The next issue to consider is motor function impairment. Accessibility includes providing access to people who have impaired physical coordination. For example, it requires considerable dexterity to use a computer mouse or to open a drop-down list or select an item from it. Your site needs to be usable without a mouse using keyboard controls. The next general issue is economic and location disadvantage. Accessibility can also be an economic issue because not everyone can afford the latest computers or the expense of broadband access. And for some people, broadband access is not available regardless of their capacity to pay. So they may have very slow internet speeds. The next issue to consider is that of language. Accessibility is also a language issue. Translating content on your website into community languages can enfranchise a broad range of people. So here's the ways in which you can help have a really accessible website. The first one that I really want to emphasize is the importance of well-written content. The World Wide Web was designed as a medium for text exchange, and this is still what it does best. Accessibility begins with well-written and well-structured content. Well-written content is concise, it avoids jargon where possible, and where jargon is unavoidable, provides a plain English explanation of that jargon. Well-structured content uses headings, paragraphs, and dot points and numbers to structure the communication. Next, it's important to provide text alternatives for non-textual parts of your information. As new capabilities have been added to the web, such as the ability to display pictures, videos, and animations, as much as they have engaged some people, they've excluded others. Wherever you provide information in a non-textual form, you need to provide a text alternative. In providing the text alternative, you need to ask yourself, does the text alternative convey the meaning offered by the non-text element? For example, if a picture conveys important information, a proper description is needed. The same applies to moving image, audio, and interactive or animated elements. Here are 9 accessibility checks that you can do to ensure that your web pages are accessible. Firstly, review the actual page content to ensure that accessibility issues haven't crept into the content design. Always use headings H1, H2, and H3 to structure your content. People using voicing browsers can move quickly from heading to find the content that interests them. But if you've bolded paragraph text to make it look like a heading, but you haven't defined it as a heading, you've removed their ability to move efficiently through your content. So they have to listen to absolutely everything. If you think about how you, as a sighted person, use the web, if you happen to be a sighted person, you'll know that you skim and scan, and in order to find the thing that particularly interests you. Or people with severe impediments of a visual variety do exactly the same thing, but their ability to skim and scan depends on the use of headings and good structure to your content. Next up, you need to make sure there are text alternatives to audio and video content and other visual content such as pictures. Secondly, you should use the W3C validation service to ensure that content and style sheets comply from a technical point of view. These services are a great way to identify things that can otherwise be overlooked. You just run your site through them, and I'll give you the web address to the W3 services at the end of this talk. It's important that your web developer understands and is empathetic to accessibility issues, as the technical construction of your website will affect accessibility significantly. Thirdly, use a visual renderer to see what the site will look like to people with various forms of visual color deficit. Colblinder.com is a useful resource, as it allows you to apply various color deficit filters to your visual design. So you can make sure that, for example, if you've got text against a bit of a colored background, you can make sure that it is still readable to people with various forms of color deficit in their vision. Some graphics programs, such as Graphics Converter for Macintosh computers, also offer color deficit emulators. 4, test the site with a voicing browser to ensure that it's meaningful to people with assistive devices. Ideally, find someone who uses a voicing or braille browser to check your website. 5, test your website with images and sound turned off to ensure that the content is still comprehensible. 6, test the browser zoom controls to verify that the site remains structured as you intend when somebody makes the text larger on your website. 7, check that pages can be navigated using the keyboard rather than with a mouse. The ability to navigate using keystrokes helps people with motor function disabilities, as they may be unable to use a mouse at all. 8, speed test your design to ensure that it will perform acceptably to people with slow connection speeds. It's especially important to have a home page that is comparatively light, because this is actually the biggest bailout point of any website, is people see the status bar crawling along and they think this is taking too long, and they leave. So do speed test your design to make sure that it's accessible to people with slow connection speeds. And 9, offer core content in community languages other than English. The other thing to know, of course, is that accessibility is a legal requirement. You can also be sued. It's important to know that public institutions are legally required to provide accessible online content. This was established at law in Australia through the case of Maguire versus SOCOG, the Sydney Organising Committee for the Olympic Games. Maguire endeavoured to find out what the program was for the Sydney Olympics, and the content was unreadable to people who were using assistive devices. So the point was established at law in Maguire versus SOCOG in the year 2000, and the Sydney Organising Committee also had to make many out-of-court settlements with a great many people who couldn't access their information. To sum up, most people are motivated to achieve good accessibility through altruism, not wanting to add burdens to those who are already disadvantaged. But good accessibility is also enlightened self-interest. You are publishing your information to make it available. So why exclude people who could be part of your audience? If you want to know more about accessibility, I encourage you to look at the World Wide Web Consortium website, who have developed resources to help people achieve good accessibility. A useful starting point is the W3C Web Accessibility Initiative at w3.org/WAI. And you can see that web address on screen. If this has been helpful to you, and obviously I hope it has been, please feel free to like or share this content using the links below. Thanks.